The series opens with Sung, a man whose life is in shambles and who owes money to practically everyone in town. We see him at home living with his elderly mother, who still works to pay off his many debts. Right before she leaves for her job, she hands him some cash so he can take his daughter out for a meal. Sung once was married and has a daughter, but they've been separated for a long time. And now his daughter lives with her mom and new husband since Sung can't support her financially. Anyway, now we see that Sung has the nerve to complain to his mother that the money she gave him is too little, so she hands him some more, then heads out. After she's gone, Sung starts rummaging around the apartment until he finds his mother's bank card. He takes it and goes out with a friend, trying to withdraw as much money as possible. Once he manages to get his hands on some cash, he places bets on horse races and surprisingly wins. He makes 4 million in winnings. Now, if you're taken aback by that number, remember that Korean currency has a high face value. It's totally normal to pay 10,000 for a cup of coffee and maybe leave a 5,000 tip. So, Sung's 4 million isn't as astronomical as it sounds. In any case, he's thrilled to have won. He tips the employee who hands him the money, then steps outside to call his daughter and tell her to get ready. He's got money now and plans to celebrate her birthday like never before. But he doesn't even finish that conversation before he notices a gang walking toward him. These guys lent him money and he's been avoiding them. He takes off running, accidentally bumping into a young woman along the way. He quickly apologizes and keeps running, but the gang eventually catches up to him. Just before they can beat him up, Sung announces he can pay them back since he's got money on him. Unfortunately, he checks his pocket and finds it's been torn open. He immediately realizes the girl he bumped into was a pickpocket who stole all his winnings. With nothing left to give the gang, they beat him. Then they force him to sign a document handing over his organs as collateral if he can't pay his debts. Sung, having no choice, signs it. They leave him lying there. Now Sung has no idea how he'll celebrate his daughter's birthday. Desperate, he returns to the employee he'd tipped earlier and asks for the tip back so he can buy something, anything for his daughter. Later, he takes her to one of those claw machines where you try to grab a stuffed toy with a mechanical arm. Sung keeps trying and failing until a kid nearby who's playing there manages to win a prize for him. Thrilled, Sung grabs the gift for his daughter, Avor, without even knowing what's inside, and rushes off. Later on, Sung meets his daughter, and they open the gift together. Turns out it's actually a lighter shaped like a gun. She's disappointed, handing it back to him, because if her mom sees it, it'll only cause more problems for Sung. The daughter seems like she wants to tell him something else, but decides against it. He spends some time with her before taking her back home. After all this, Sung heads to the subway station. While waiting for the train, a stranger approaches him and says he wants Sung to play a game of dakji, a game similar to flipping cards, where you throw your tile onto another tile on the ground to flip it over. If you succeed, you win. Sung isn't interested at first and tries to brush the man off, but the stranger insists, saying Sung has nothing to lose. Each time he wins, he'll get 100,000. So Sung agrees to play, but he fails miserably, as usual. Each time Sung loses, the stranger demands 100,000. Sung admits he's broke. The stranger then proposes he'll collect his winnings by slapping Sung each time he loses, so they keep playing. Every time Sung loses, he gets slapped, over and over. Finally, Sung manages to win one round and is so angry he wants to hit the stranger back, but the stranger simply pulls out 100,000 and gives it to him. Before leaving, the stranger hands Sung a business card and suggests that if Sung wants to play more games like this and potentially win millions, he should call the number on the card. Then he reveals he knows all about Sung, including the fact that Sung signed away his organs that very day. It's clear the only way Sung can ever pay off his debts is by joining this game. The stranger walks away, leaving Sung reeling. A bit later, Sung goes home and bumps into Sang's mother. Sang used to be Sung's friend from the neighborhood, younger than him, who left after graduating from college and now apparently works in finance. Sung complains to her that Sang never checks on them. Then he buys some food and goes home. Once home, Sung's mother tells him his daughter will travel to the US with her mom and stepdad. That's the thing his daughter was trying to tell him earlier. Sung's mother explains that if he wants custody of his daughter before she leaves, he must prove to the court that he can financially support her. She urges him to do this because once the daughter leaves for the US, Sung might never see her again. Sung gets really upset and sits in his room feeling miserable as he looks at photos of himself and his daughter. That's when he decides to pull out the card the stranger gave him on the subway and make the call. The voice on the other line asks if he wants to join the games. Sung says yes, so they take some info from him and tell him to go to a certain location where a car will pick him up. Sure enough, Sung arrives at the place, and a vehicle pulls up with a driver dressed in red, wearing a strange mask with a circle on it. Sung gets in and sees the rest of the passengers are all asleep. He tries to ask the driver about their destination and why everyone else is passed out, but then a gas is sprayed, knocking Sung unconscious like the others. Sometime later, Sung awakens in a massive room filled with beds. Everyone around him is also wearing the same uniform he has on. As soon as he gets off his bed, he meets an old man labeled Player 1. The old man is counting the players, and Sung tells him the numbers are on the big screen in the middle of the room. The old man explains that he knows. He's counting out loud because he has a brain tumor, and his doctor advised him to do exercises like counting so he doesn't slip into dementia. Sung feels sorry for the old man and asks why he's even here if he's at the end of his life. The old man explains that because his days are numbered, he wants a new, once-in-a-lifetime adventure before he dies. Meanwhile, a fight breaks out between two contestants, a thug and a young woman. Turns out the young woman is the pickpocket who stole Sung's winnings. When Sung sees this, he tries to shove the thug aside so the pickpocket can give back his money. But just then, masked guards enter. These are the soldiers responsible for running the game. Their leader is the one wearing a mask with a square on it, which means he outranks those wearing circles. The guards announce that they will all stay here for 6 days and play 6 different games, and the last one standing at the end will become very rich. The contestants start complaining, asking how they can trust these masked men who put them to sleep, but the guard explains their secrecy is necessary to protect the integrity of the games. Player number 118 steps forward. He's Sang, Sung's old friend, who apparently embezzled a lot of money and owes an enormous debt. He's skeptical about the whole setup, so the guards show him video footage of him playing the Subway Dakji game and remind him they already gave him money for that. This proves they're not just tricking the contestants now. Then the guards play similar videos for every player, revealing that all 456 participants are drowning in debt with no way out. The guards basically say, either go back to your life and land in jail, or stick around for a shot at a fortune. Nobody argues, which is taken as consent. Everyone signs a participation form, which includes 3 key rules for the game. 1. A player is not allowed to stop playing. 2. Any player who refuses to play will be eliminated. 3. The games end if the majority agrees they should stop. Keep these rules in mind. They will matter later. After signing, each participant stands in front of a camera to be photographed. Then the first game begins. The large group is led out into a massive playground. The first game is red light, green light. A giant robotic doll that looks like a young girl is at the front. She chants the words, red light, green light, and when she turns around, the players have to freeze. If anyone is caught moving, they're eliminated from the game. Of course, no one initially suspects that elimination means actual death. The doll signals the start, and everyone begins running. One guy gets caught by the doll and is promptly shot dead, though it takes everyone a moment to realize he's actually dead. Another player runs over to check on him, thinking he's just passed out, then panics when he sees the blood. The second player tries to flee and is also shot. That's when everyone finally understands that if they get eliminated, they die. Chaos ensues. Terrified, people start running around randomly, which only causes the doll to gun down even more of them in a horrifying massacre. Sung can't move at first because someone who's been shot collapses on him. Everyone is in shock until the old man, player number 1, bravely starts moving again, focusing on reaching the finish line. Others see him and realize that standing still is certain death. Sang runs over to Sung and explains that there's a motion detector in the doll's eyes, so if you stay behind someone else, the doll won't pick you up. The pickpocket girl tries to hide behind the thug, but then yanks him down so she can keep going while the doll doesn't detect her. He falls, but once the doll scans past, he continues as well. Finally, players like Sang, the pickpocket, the old man, and the thug cross the finish line. Sung is almost there but trips on a dead body just a few steps away from the goal. He's about to be detected by the doll when Ali, a Pakistani contestant, grabs him and keeps him from moving at the exact second the doll scans them. They both manage to remain motionless. Once the doll faces away again, Ali and Sung make a final dash across the finish line. By now, only a few people are left struggling to reach the finish before time runs out. When the time is up, automated gunfire kills everyone who didn't cross in time. Meanwhile, we see that the head of the operation, a figure wearing a black mask, has been watching all this from a control room, apparently quite entertained, with music playing in the background. When the game ends, a massive ceiling closes above the playground. We realize the entire setup is hidden on a remote island, completely cut off from civilization. Following the first game, the soldiers dispose of the players' bodies by burning them. The survivors are devastated. They had no idea the game involved killing. Not long after, the guards enter and announce that only 201 players remain out of the original 456. One of the women starts sobbing uncontrollably, begging the guards to let her go home because she recently had a baby. She's not alone. A whole group starts pleading for their lives. That's when Sang speaks up, reminding them of the third rule. If a majority votes to end the games will stop. The guard agrees and says they'll hold a vote, but first he wants to show them something. He points to a giant globe hanging from the ceiling. Money starts dropping into it. The guard explains there's a whopping 45 billion in there, enough to fix any financial mess they might have. He adds that if they all quit now, each of the families of the deceased will receive 100 million. But if they continue playing, the final winner will walk away with the entire 45 billion. Suddenly, greed triumphs over fear. Even those who were ready to give up moments before start leaning towards staying. During the vote, some players who were in hysterics just minutes ago choose to continue, including the same mother who begged to leave. Sang also ends up voting to keep playing after seeing all that cash. The final tally is tied, 100 votes for stopping and 100 votes for continuing. The deciding vote belongs to player number 1, the old man. Tension is sky high as everyone waits to see what he'll do, and eventually he votes to end the games. Sung and the others who voted to quit are overjoyed. The guard says that's it, the game stops. But he does note that they'll have another chance if they all want to come back later. They drive the contestants away and literally dump them on roads in random places with their eyes covered. Sung wakes up to find the pickpocket lying next to him because they got tossed out in the same spot, and they're tied together at the wrists. They untie each other, and she leaves after mocking him about the money she stole. Next, Sung goes to the police station to tell his story, but no one believes him. The officers ridicule him, though there is a young detective named Huang who overhears everything. After Sung leaves, Huang picks up the business card Sung dropped at the station and starts thinking, keep an eye on this detective. Sung goes back home to find his mother missing. He wanders around searching for her and eventually spots Sang watching his own mother from a distance without letting her see him. Apparently, Sang told her he was traveling abroad. Sung approaches him and they sit together. Sang admits his debts aren't just 650 million like the game organizers mentioned. It's actually 6 billion. He can't declare bankruptcy either, since the loans were taken out against his family home and his mother's shop. If he defaults, they lose everything, so he's planning to rejoin the game. At that moment, Sung gets a call telling him his mother is in the hospital. Once he arrives, he finds out she has advanced gangrene in her foot. If she doesn't receive immediate treatment, the doctors will have to amputate. Even with that urgency, she checks herself out of the hospital because she can't afford the cost. Sung suggests using her insurance, but his mother reveals it's no longer available because it was used up trying to cover Sung's theft and his other expenses. Furious, she walks off, leaving Sung crying in frustration. Faced with these hardships, Sung decides he must return to the game. Meanwhile, Detective Huang is looking for his brother who's been missing. He goes to his brother's rented room, and the landlord lady says she hasn't seen him in a week. As Huang searches the room, he stumbles on the same game card he saw at the station, making him worry his brother might have gotten mixed up in this as well. He heads to the station and checks Sung's address. Meanwhile, every one of the other contestants finds life outside is a bigger hell than the games. The pickpocket visits her younger brother in a care home. We learn they defected from North Korea together, and now she has nowhere to go and no place for them to live. She promised Daly that she'd come back for him so they could live together someday. Desperate to fulfill that promise, she decides to rejoin the game too. Ali's situation is equally bleak. He's an immigrant from Pakistan living with his family, struggling to make ends meet. He goes to the factory where he works to demand unpaid wages, but the boss refuses. A fight breaks out, and the boss's hand gets accidentally mangled in the machinery. Ali panics and flees. He's got more than enough reason to return to the game. He needs money for his family and to escape the trouble he's just caused. Sang, meanwhile, is at home on the verge of suicide, doing nothing but drinking. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. He finds a game card with the date, time, and place to stand by if he wants to rejoin. As for Sung, he's still depressed because he can't afford his mother's treatment. He sits alone, lost in thought, when he unexpectedly meets the old man from the game. They chat, and the old man says he doesn't have much time left, but plans to go back to the competition. Sung seriously considers his words. He then visits his ex-wife, asking her for money to help with his mother's operation. She refuses. While they're still talking, her new husband shows up outside with Sung's daughter. Embarrassed, Sung quickly leaves. Moments later, the husband steps out to offer Sung the money he needs, on the condition that Sung never bother them again. They're moving to the US and don't want the daughter growing even more attached to him. Sung realizes it's basically hush money to keep him away. Enraged, he attacks the man, who then hits him back, throwing the cash at him. Sung storms off. Meanwhile, the thug is talking to a friend, planning to go back into the game with a bunch of his own guys and smuggle in weapons to rob the place from the inside. But his friend betrays him, tipping off some Filipinos who are also after the thug for money. They catch him by surprise, and he nearly gets handed over to them. In desperation, he kills his friend and jumps into the ocean, narrowly avoiding capture. Returning to Sung, he arrives at his place only to find Detective Huang waiting. Huang explains his brother's disappearance and how he suspects a connection with the games. Sung, however, has already decided to go back, so he plays dumb, telling Huang he was drunk and made everything up at the station. He refuses to help, leaving the detective with nothing. The next day, most of the players are waiting to be picked up again, having realized life on the outside is more brutal than anything they saw in that first game. Finally, the cars arrive, and once they climb inside, the same knockout gas is sprayed. But this time, the pickpocket girl pinches her nose so the gas won't knock her out completely. Detective Huang has been tailing Sung in his own car. Huang follows until they reach a port. There, the vans board a ferry to take everyone to the island. Huang seizes the chance to sneak onto the ferry and hides inside the same van as Sung. He pretends to be unconscious when the masked driver checks on the players. Then Huang strangles the driver. He switches clothes, dressing the corpse in the player's uniform and taking the driver's jumpsuit for himself. Now Huang is effectively one of the soldiers. Once they reach the island, the contestants are taken off the vans and changed back into the standard uniform. The pickpocket girl cleverly manages to smuggle in her small knife. Everyone wakes up on the island. Sung finds the old man again and notices most people, 187 of them, have actually returned, leaving only a handful who opted out for good. Sung also notices that Sang and Ali are back too. The four of them form a small group, hoping to help each other guess upcoming games, since the rules aren't revealed until the last moment. The thug is back as well and gathers a gang of his own. He tries to recruit the pickpocket, but she refuses and mocks him for thinking she'd follow his orders again. She'd worked under him before escaping him in the past. Later that night, a female contestant named Han gets up to head to the bathroom. The pickpocket goes with her, but each woman has a different goal. Han just wants to smoke cigarettes she smuggled in, while the pickpocket aims to climb through the air vents to spy on the organizers and discover which game they'll be playing the next day. They reach the bathroom. The pickpocket asks Han to stand guard while she uses a small knife to open a vent and crawl through. She sees a bunch of guards preparing something large-scale with a huge amount of sugar. She can't be certain exactly what they're making, but hurries back down before they notice her absence. Han presses the pickpocket for details, but she doesn't give a clear answer, saying she'll tell her in the morning. Sang, who's pretending to sleep, overhears everything. The next day, Han again tries to figure out what the pickpocket saw. The pickpocket reveals they were melting sugar, but isn't sure for what. Han finds this unhelpful and walks off. Meanwhile, we see that one contestant, a doctor, receives a secret note hidden inside his food, telling him the name of the next game. Keep in mind this doctor for later. After breakfast, they announce the second game is about to begin. On the way, Sang corners the pickpocket and asks her what she saw. At first, she refuses to tell him. He explains that he's familiar with all the children's games from South Korea, which appear to be repeated here. If she tells him what she saw, he might guess the next game. Finally, She reveals that it involved melting sugar, but neither of them can figure out precisely what the game is. Everyone lines up outside, and they're shown 4 shapes: a circle, a triangle, a star, and an umbrella. Each person must choose a shape and stand in front of it, and only then will they be told what to do. At that moment, Sang suddenly puts 2 and 2 together. The game is the Sugar Honeycomb Challenge, where you have to carve out the shape from a thin cookie-like disc without breaking it. But Sang, even though he's realized the game, doesn't warn anyone. Sung asks Sang which shape to pick, and Sang slyly suggests that everyone on their team split up. He personally chooses the triangle because it's the easiest shape. Ali picks the circle, the old man picks the star, and poor Sung ends up with the umbrella, by far the hardest shape. Sang knows how difficult it is, but says nothing to Sung. The pickpocket is suspicious of Sung. She heard him claim he didn't know the game. Still, she decides to follow him at the last second and chooses the triangle as well. The contest begins. Each player is given a small tin containing a sugar disc stamped with one of the 4 shapes, plus a needle to carve it out. The moment Sung opens his tin, he's horrified, realizing he's stuck with an umbrella. If he cracks the disc even slightly, he'll be shot. The tension is insane. Players try to carefully carve out their shapes within a 10-minute limit, a guard standing right over them with a gun. As soon as the first player fails and breaks their cookie, they're instantly shot. It's a nerve-wracking sight. Eventually, the pickpocket successfully carves out her shape. The doctor also manages it because, as hinted, he already knew what the game would be. Ali finishes soon after, and then Sang succeeds too. Sung gives Sang a look, realizing his friend knew all along but didn't warn him. While Sung continues to struggle, a bead of sweat drips onto his sugar disc, slightly dissolving it. That gives him a brilliant idea. He starts licking the back of the disc, so the shape in the center detaches more easily. Slowly but surely, more players notice and do the same, including the old man. Right before time runs out, Sung finally manages to carve out his umbrella successfully. Meanwhile, Han, the woman who smoked, uses a lighter she snuck in to heat her needle, making it easier to carve out her shape. She finishes in time, and upon leaving, sees the thug struggling with his shape, the star, so she tosses him her lighter. He uses it and escapes death by the skin of his teeth. When the game is almost over, one last player fails. A guard moves to shoot him, but the desperate contestant grabs the guard's gun, shoots another guard in the shoulder, and demands the guard remove his mask. It turns out he's just a very young man. The desperate contestant can't go through with killing him, so he commits suicide. Moments later, the masked leader arrives and kills the unmasked guard without hesitation, telling everyone that if any soldier's identity is revealed, they serve no purpose. Afterward, Detective Wong quietly takes the dead guard's square-marked mask, upgrading from his circle mask to a higher rank. The survivors return to the dormitory. Out of the 187 who rejoined, only 108 remain now. The next day, everyone lines up for what they call breakfast, but they're only given a single egg and a soft drink. This infuriates the thug, who's used to getting what he wants. Han suggests they line up again to grab extra food. The thug and his group do exactly that, leaving 5 other contestants with nothing. One of the cheated contestants confronts the thug, who beats him to death. The shocking part is that the guards do nothing to stop it. Everyone realizes that if they kill each other, the organizers won't intervene. Now, let's switch focus back to the doctor. Remember how he keeps getting advance info about the games? He's actually helping a few guards harvest organs from the dead contestants' bodies. He performs the surgeries, and they smuggle the organs out to sell. In return, they give him the name of the next game so he can survive each round. When the doctor finishes extracting organs for them that day, he asks which game is next. One guard hands him a special egg with a note inside. Another guard mentions that later tonight, there will be a game in the dorms. The organizers purposely gave them so little food to spark fights, thereby cutting down the weaker players before the next game. Sure enough, the doctor returns to the dorm, and night falls. Everyone's on edge, splitting into groups for protection. Sung tells the old man not to sleep because things are about to get messy once they turn out the lights. He also notices the pickpocket is alone and invites her to join them because he knows the thug wants revenge on her. Despite the fact that she stole his money, Sung can't just let her fend for herself. The doctor, meanwhile, searches for the strongest group to join. Obviously, the thug's group. They strike a deal. The doctor ensures they'll learn about future games, and in exchange, they let him join their team so no one kills him during the night. Soon enough, the lights go out, The masked leader in the control room orders the lights be flicked on and off to create even more chaos. Sure enough, the thugs group starts slaughtering people. He almost kills the pickpocket, but she escapes. Someone tries to kill Sung, but Sang and Ali save him just in time. All around the room, we witness brutal scenes of people being choked with pillows, stabbed, and beaten to death. The guards simply stand at the door to shoot anyone who tries to flee. Amid the mayhem, Sung and his friends frantically search for the old man, who has vanished. Sung is extremely worried about him. Eventually, the pickpocket runs over to Sung for protection, as agreed, and the thug rushes forward to kill her. But Sung fends him off with help from Sang and Ali. They all brace themselves for an all-out brawl with the thugs group, until the old man suddenly appears, standing high up on a bed, begging the organizers to stop the madness. He shouts that if everyone dies here, there'll be no one left to play the remaining games. Hearing this, the masked leader orders the soldiers to intervene. They storm in and end the bloodbath. Then they search the remaining players for hidden weapons. During this search, Detective Huang discreetly tells Sung who he really is and asks Sung if he knows his brother's name. But Sung says they don't share names here, so Huang moves on. After that night's massacre, only 80 out of the 107 remain. The next day, they announce a new game and instruct them to form teams of 10. So Sung, Sang, the old man, the pickpocket, and Ali stick together. They need 5 more players. Sang suggests finding strong men, since no one knows what the next challenge will be, and it might require physical power. Everyone heads off to recruit tough players. At the same time, Han tries to join the thugs team, but he already knows the game in advance, thanks to the doctor, and he refuses to let her in because he wants only strong men. The pickpocket finds a girl sitting alone, abandoned, and brings her on board. Eventually, Sung's group ends up short one person because nobody wants to team up with the old man. At the last second, Han appears, rejected by everyone else, and joins them. They all gather in the arena, only to discover the challenge is tug of war, played on a high platform. The losing team gets pulled off the platform and falls to a gruesome death. They watch the thugs team go first. Because the thug picked all the muscular men, knowing what was coming, they win effortlessly. Sung and his group are horrified. If they end up against any equally strong team, they have no chance. Suddenly, it's Sung's team's turn. The opposing team is made up entirely of strong men, though not the thugs group. Panicking, they look to the old man for a plan. He recalls a method he used to win tug of war in his youth, even though they were weaker. He explains that for the first 10 seconds, you do everything possible to brace and stand firm so the other team wastes energy trying to pull you. Once they start to tire, you yank the rope all at once to take advantage of that moment of collapse. It's their only real shot, along with praying for a miracle. They step onto the raised platform, hearts pounding, the opposing team pulling fiercely on the rope. Sure enough, at some point, the other team begins to gain the upper hand, dragging them dangerously close to the edge. Sung's team can feel themselves on the brink of disaster. They're on the verge of losing the tug-of-war game until Sang suggests a trick to turn the tables. He tells them to move forward 3 steps so the other team falls off balance, then pull the rope while they're down. They do exactly that, and it works. The opposing team plunges to their deaths. Back in the dorm, we see there are only 40 players left. Han is glaring at the thug, determined to get revenge for how he betrayed her and refused to take her on his team. Later, Sung's group gathers to talk. Sang warns that once the lights go out tonight, the thug's crew is probably going to attack them. They decide to build a barrier out of beds as a makeshift fortress to protect themselves. They get started, and then the thug walks over and tells Sung that a barricade like that won't really keep them safe. Sung fires back, suggesting the thug should watch his own back because his men might turn on him at any moment. The thug starts getting paranoid, goes back to his crew, and orders them to just sleep tonight rather than attacking anyone else. Sure enough, the lights go off at bedtime, but the doctor isn't there with them. He's gone off with a group of guards to the secret location where they do their usual organ harvesting, trading his medical work for info on the next game. There's a guard who works the cameras, deleting all evidence of them sneaking around so they won't get caught. At the same time, Detective Huang is among those guards in disguise, though no one recognizes him because of the mask. Huang overhears them mention a previous person whose organs were harvested, but they didn't get the full payment for those organs because that person only had 1 kidney. Huang starts asking questions since his brother also had one kidney, but the guards get suspicious, so he goes quiet before blowing his cover. Once they finish cutting up the corpse, Huang steps outside with another guard to deliver the organs to a buyer who arrives by boat. On the way, the guard explains that this particular path was built so VIPs can escape if anything goes wrong, and blow the entire facility to bits so no trace remains. Huang asks who these VIPs are, making the other guard suspicious. The guard threatens Huang with a knife, telling him to remove his mask to prove which side he's on. Huang complies, taking off his mask, but in one swift motion, he pulls out his gun and aims it at the guard. He demands to know more about the one-kidney person, suspecting it could be his brother, who lost a kidney donating it to Huang. The guard insists it wasn't a man, it was a woman, so there's no way it was Huang's brother. Huang asks if the guard knows anything else about his brother. The guard says everything's documented in the records kept in the leader's office. That's all Huang needs to hear. He shoots the guard, realizing he no longer needs him. Meanwhile, the doctor is furious with the other corrupt soldiers because they've failed to find out the next game. If he goes back to the thug empty-handed, he'll be killed. In the ensuing argument, the doctor attacks one soldier and runs. Another soldier chases him all the way to the playing field. Just as the soldier is about to kill the doctor, the leader arrives. He shoots the soldier in the arm. Then, surprisingly, he tells the soldier he's not punishing him for smuggling organs behind his back. No, the real crime was tipping off the doctor and destroying the principle of fairness for all players. The leader won't tolerate cheating, even though murder doesn't bother him. After saying that, he kills the wounded soldier and then kills the doctor as well. Meanwhile, Huang proceeds toward the leader's office. He encounters a locked metal gate and blasts the lock open with his gun, making noise that the leader hears. However, the leader is more concerned with finding out what happened to the conspirators' bodies. Soldiers discover all the corpses, including the one Huang killed. One soldier informs the leader that they've accounted for all of them except the person who killed that guard. The leader knows that means the intruder is still on the island because all the oxygen tanks for underwater escape are accounted for. No one left by sea. He orders a search. When he inspects the bullet lodged in the dead guard's skull, he realizes it's from an unfamiliar source, confirming they have an outsider on the island. Huang manages to reach the leader's archive and finds records going all the way back to 1999, meaning this whole game has been running yearly since then. Countless people have died, with only one winner each time. Huang scans the lists of past winners and sees that his brother participated in 2015 and won. Huang starts taking pictures of the records for evidence. At that moment, the leader's phone rings. He returns to his office, luckily not seeing Huang. He picks up the call, and we learn that the VIPs have arrived to watch the final stages of the games. The leader leaves. Huang slips out from his hiding spot and attempts to call the police, but there's no signal. He puts the receiver back on the phone in a slightly different position. Remember this detail. It'll matter later. Meanwhile, the remaining contestants wake up for the next game and head to the play area. There, they find the doctor's corpse on display alongside the bodies of the 4 soldiers, as an example of what happens when someone tries to cheat. The 4th game's instructions are announced. Players must form teams of 2. Nobody knows the nature of the challenge, so they all try to pick strong partners. Sang teams up with Ali, the thug pairs with one of his guys, and the pickpocket pairs with the girl she brought into the team. Sung almost partners with someone else, but then realizes there are 39 people left after the doctor's death, so the old man might be left alone. Sung worries the old man will get killed if he has no partner, so he chooses him, even though it means Sung loses his shot at a physically powerful partner. That leaves Han without anyone, because nobody likes or trusts her. She tries joining different duos, but gets rejected every time. The thug roughly shoves her to the ground when she approaches his teammate, and she's dragged away by the guards, hysterical because she's sure this means she'll be killed. Everyone else moves on to the playing field, only to learn a brutal twist. You're not working with your teammate, you're playing against them. Each pair is given a bag of 10 marbles each. The objective is to take all of your opponent's marbles by any means, but without using violence. You only have 30 minutes. The shock is staggering. People picked someone they cared about or trusted, and now they have to beat them or die. Sung is torn about how to handle the old man, who seems completely lost. The old man wanders around the play area, recalling memories because it looks like his childhood neighborhood. He keeps calling Sung his ganbu, meaning his closest friend. Remember that term. Sung tries to get him to focus and play, because if they don't start, they'll both be killed. But the old man seems to be slipping in and out of coherence. Sung yells at him out of desperation, and finally they begin a game. Meanwhile, Sang and Ali are playing. Ali keeps winning, and Sang is furious. He devises a scheme, telling Ali they should cheat the system by teaming up instead, implying the organizers won't kill both of them if they keep their marbles together. Poor Ali believes him. Sang convinces Ali to hand over his marbles, saying he'll string them around Ali's neck so they don't get lost. Then Sang secretly swaps out the marbles for stones when Ali isn't looking, sends Ali off on a fake errand, and hands in the real marbles to the guard. Ali realizes he's been duped only when he sees Sang walking away with his marbles. Ali dies as a tragic victim of his own kindness. The pickpocket and her partner spend the entire round talking, swapping stories about their lives. When the other girl hears about the pickpocket situation, how she needs to care for her younger brother, she chooses to intentionally lose, handing over her marbles so the pickpocket can survive and rescue her sibling from the children's home. The girl is killed, sacrificing herself in a heartbreaking scene. The thug also wins against his partner and survives. As for Sung, the old man's confusion leads to him losing. Sung seizes the opportunity to trick the old man into giving up his marbles, taking advantage of his mental state. However, one marble remains with the old man, who then challenges Sung to one last wager, all of Sung's marbles against the old man's single marble. Sung feels that's obviously unfair, but the old man points out that it's also unfair for Sung to con and exploit an elderly sick man. That's when we learn the old man was aware Sung was deceiving him. Nevertheless, he gives Sung that final marble, thanking him for letting him relive his happiest days by playing this game. He then dies in a scene that's incredibly sad. After the marble game, the survivors return to the dorm and are stunned to find Han is still alive. She wasn't killed because she never actually played. She was simply left out. So by default, there was no game for her to lose. Only 17 players remain. Meanwhile, we see the leader answering his phone. He notices that the phone receiver was put back incorrectly and realizes someone has been in his office. He picks up anyway, talking to the VIPs, who inform him they've arrived. The leader checks around his office and the record storage, but doesn't find Huang. Huang is hiding close by and is almost discovered. Then soldiers call the leader to report they found a corpse in the lake. The leader leaves to investigate, giving Huang another narrow escape. Down by the lake, the leader discovers the body of the guard Huang killed earlier, the one whose uniform Huang stole. They also find Huang's police ID card in the guard's pocket. The leader realizes Huang is a detective. He orders his men to burn the body, then heads off to welcome the VIPs. Sure enough, a group of wealthy individuals from around the world arrives, disguised so no one can identify them. They ask about the host, the owner and creator of the game, who's supposed to be in charge. The leader explains that the host couldn't make it this time due to personal reasons, but assures them the games will proceed as planned. He escorts them to their viewing room, and we learn the entire event is basically a twisted form of entertainment for these millionaires. They've been watching the games from the beginning, streaming on their phones from wherever they were, but came in person now that the competition is nearing its climax. They watch one player, number 69, commit suicide on their monitors. He can't go on living because his wife died in the marble game when she was his partner. The VIPs aren't disturbed that someone died. They're upset only because one of them had bet on number 69 to win. Meanwhile, Huang is nearby, posing as a waiter. He knocks out a staff member, takes his uniform and mask, and sets his phone to record video of everything these VIPs say. He leaves the real waiter tied up and sneaks off. The next morning, the players awaken to find number 69's body. He's killed himself. That means only 16 remain. They go to hear instructions for the 5th game, where they see 16 mannequins wearing numbers from 1 to 16. Each player must pick one of these numbers, and that determines their order in the challenge. Sung agonizes over which number to choose. If he goes first, it might be too risky because he won't know the rules. If he goes last, he might run out of time. By the time he decides, the only numbers left are 1 and 16. He takes number 1, but then contestant number 96 begs Sung to swap because he's never been first in his life and wants to try it. Feeling sympathetic, Sung trades numbers with him, ending up with number 16. They head out to see the 5th game. which features a glass bridge leading to the other side. The catch? Each step you take is either reinforced glass that can hold two people safely, or fragile glass that will shatter on contact, sending you plummeting to your death. Sung thanks his lucky stars he ended up going last because the players ahead of him will reveal which panels are safe. However, there's only 16 minutes total to cross. The first player steps forward but falls through on the second panel and dies. The next player tries a method of stepping left then right, but that fails too and she dies immediately. A third tries to calculate angles to figure out which panel is which, and he makes it 3 steps. Then his math fails him at the 4th and he plummets. Time is ticking away. One by one, players attempt the crossing, with most dying quickly. Finally, Sung, the pickpocket, and Sang realize time is running out, so they hop onto the bridge along with the others. People keep dying, leaving the thug in front. He stops, refusing to move any further. Anyone behind him is free to go ahead if they want. Han, who's stuck behind the thug on the same panel, seizes the chance to press against his back, reminding him she swore to kill him if he ever betrayed her. She wraps her arms around him and jumps off the bridge together, taking him down with her, and they both die. That leaves just Sang, Sung, the pickpocket, and another man who once worked in a glass factory. He claims he can tell the difference between reinforced glass and fragile glass by how it refracts the light. Indeed, he starts identifying which panels are safe, but the leader notices this, and to keep the game purely up to chance, he cuts the lights. Panic sets in as time slips away. Only seconds remain. Sang coldly shoves the glass worker forward to test the next step, and he crashes through the fragile panel. He dies, letting Sang see the correct path. Sung and the pickpocket are horrified by his betrayal, but there's no time to dwell on it. Sang crosses, followed by the pickpocket and Sung. The second they make it across, the remaining glass panels explode, injuring the 3 of them with flying shards. So, only those 3 remain in the game. Meanwhile, at the same time, Huang lures one of the VIPs away, assaults him, and forces him to confess on camera about everything that's happening. With his evidence recorded, Huang leaves, trying to escape the island. A soldier finds the VIP and alerts the leader, who immediately sets out to capture Huang before he flees. They search until they spot him. He's taken off his mask by now, so the leader recognizes him. They hurry to the oxygen tanks, where they find one missing, the sign Huang used it to dive away. The leader and some of his men head out in a boat to chase him. Huang surfaces far from the island and climbs onto dry land. He tries to call his boss, desperately sending pictures and videos, but the cell reception is too weak. The leader and his men catch up, cornering him near a high cliff. Huang has just 1 bullet left in his gun. He shoots the leader, wounding him in the shoulder. The leader removes his mask, revealing he is actually Huang's missing brother. He pleads with Huang to come back so he can survive. If Huang refuses, he'll have to kill him. Huang won't go back, so his brother shoots him, causing him to fall into the water. There's a moment of heartbreak in the leader's eyes, knowing his brother took all these risks to find him. Meanwhile, Sung, Sang, and the pickpocket return to the dorm. Sung confronts Sang about pushing the glass worker to his death. As they argue, the guards arrive with fancy new suits for them and announce they'll be treated to a special dinner as the final survivors. When the pickpocket changes into her formal clothes, we see she's badly wounded in her stomach from the exploding glass. She hides it so no one notices and goes to dinner with Sang and Sung. After the meal, the guards purposely leave them all with knives, encouraging them to eliminate each other. Returning to the dorm, the 3 sit tensely, watching one another. Sung notices the pickpocket about to drift off, so he approaches her, and she assumes he's come to kill her. But he explains he's holding a knife because he doesn't trust Sang, not her. They talk about how whoever survives should take care of the other's family. In mid-conversation, Sang dozes off, and Sung contemplates murdering him while he's asleep, but the pickpocket stops him, saying it's not in his nature. Just then, the pickpocket collapses, her injury too severe. Sung panics, rushes to call for the guards to help, but the moment they enter carrying a coffin, he realizes Sang took advantage of the situation to finish her off. Furious, Sung launches himself at Sang, but the guards restrain him. They need both of them for the final round. After a while, the last game begins, which is literally Squid Game, the namesake of the entire series. The cord is drawn on the ground in the shape of a squid. There are 2 players, attacker and defender. The attacker starts outside the shape, hopping on 1 foot until reaching a certain spot inside, declaring himself the secret inspector, at which point he can move with both feet. Then he has to fight the defender within the boundaries of the squid shape, trying to reach the squid's head to win. Sung is the attacker, and Sang is the defender. The game begins. Sung tries distracting Sang by talking, angering Sang enough that he charges forward. Sung grabs some dirt off the ground, flings it in Sang's face to blind him, and dashes to the designated spot to become the secret inspector. Sang recovers, and they clash viciously, trading blows. Sang claims the pickpocket would have died anyway, so he just put her out of her misery. Sung retorts that she saved Sang's life by stopping Sung from killing him earlier. They fight until Sung gains the upper hand, beating Sang down. Sung is about to reach the squid's head and end the game but pauses, remembering they grew up together. His good heart won't let him go through with it. Instead, he tells a guard he wants to quit the game. He'd rather not claim the prize. Just then, Sang makes his own choice. He instructs Sung to take care of his mother, stabs himself in the neck, and ends his own life so Sung can win the money and support his family. And that, at last, is the end of the game. The leader drives Sung away, and Sung demands to know why they're doing all this. The leader responds they're all just racehorses to the organizers, so Sung shouldn't bother trying to win anyone's sympathy. He then tells Sung he can take his winnings and forget about everything, or else he'll be killed if he talks. They toss Sung out of a car onto a street with a bank card in his mouth. He checks the card and finds the fortune is indeed there. Heading home, he runs into Sang's mother. She tries to talk to him, giving him some food for himself and his mother, and he tries to offer her money, but she declines. He leaves, struggling to say anything because he's so devastated. He returns to his place only to find that his own mother has died days ago, with no one even noticing. A full year passes. Sung is living in misery, barely interacting with anyone. The bank manager handling his funds calls him in out of concern, because not a single withdrawal has been made from the vast sum. Sung hasn't touched the blood money at all. He's been borrowing to survive, feeling that using those funds would make him complicit in the killings. He assures the manager he's fine. Then on his way out, he actually borrows some cash from the manager. Afterwards, he sits alone by the sea. A woman selling flowers approaches, and he buys one. Tucked inside the flower is a note, revealing a date, time, and place for a meeting, signed with the word Ganbu. It's the same special term the old man used. Sung rushes to the designated spot and finds the old man, gravely ill and hooked up to life support. Sung is speechless, not understanding how he's still alive. The old man suggests they play one final game. From their window, they see a homeless man on the street. He's been there for hours in the cold, and nobody has stopped to help him. The old man bets that no one will show up before midnight. If someone does, Sung wins. While waiting, the old man explains it all. He's the host of the game, an extremely wealthy man. The rich, he says, have nothing to entertain them, so they came up with this brutal event. People from around the world bet huge sums of money. His fortune kept growing, and the death toll soared. When his illness grew worse, he decided to participate himself, claiming it's more exciting to play than just watch. Sung asks why he was allowed to live, and the old man admits it was just for fun, so he could enjoy playing alongside him. Sung can hardly believe what he's hearing. He watches the man on the street, not because he cares about the bet, but to prove to the old man that human beings are capable of kindness, not just killing each other for money. Right at midnight, a police car arrives and helps the homeless man. Delighted, Sung turns to tell the old man people do care, only to find the old man has died. Sung remarks that he lost the bet, then walks away. Moments later, the leader enters, closes the old man's eyes, and recalls how the old man had instructed him to handle the VIPs when they arrived, right before he joined the game himself. After this meeting, Sung decides to change his life. He drastically alters his appearance, even dyeing his hair. Then he goes to get the pickpocket's brother from the children's home, just like he promised. He brings the boy to Sang's mother, asking her to look after him until he returns. He leaves them together, giving her a bag. When she opens it, she finds a huge sum of money and a note explaining it's the debt Sang owed him. Finally, Sung heads to the airport to travel to the US and see his daughter. But on his way through the subway, he spots the same man who first roped him into the games, handing a business card to another unsuspecting victim. Sung chases after him, but the man gets on the train and escapes. Sung grabs the business card from the newbie and warns him not to get involved. It'll destroy his life. He immediately calls the number on the card, realizing the games are still happening despite the old man's death. The people on the other line recognize Sung and tell him to forget it all and go see his daughter, but he vows to make them pay, turning back from his flight to America. We don't know exactly what he's planning, but presumably that'll be revealed in Season 2. And that's how Season 1 ends. See you.